Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial video. We are still on the series of functions, Excel functions that we use in financial modeling. And today we are going to be looking at four Excel functions that we can use in financial models. Our concentration would be on quarters. Now, two questions that we want to answer when it comes to quarters. And the first question is, how do we identify a period at the end of a quarter? And then how do we identify the period just immediately after the end of a quarter? You would see what I mean when we start putting this into practice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the quarter row. I'm going to bring it down because we're going to have some subs for the quarters. And then we're going to have, we're going to look at start of the quarter, start of quarter. So let's just assume this name for this row, start of the quarter. And so what we want to do is we want to identify the start of every quarter. The reason we're doing this is because, just like I said in a previous video, you might have to identify the start of a quarter because you want to implement something that must start at the beginning of a quarter. And so that's why we want to do this. So the first step you can do, or a way that you can achieve this, is like I explained in the previous video, is actually to take the quarter number, because like you can see this quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4, and it starts with quarter 1 again in a new year. So we're going to take the quarter number in our current column, and we're going to say minus whatever is in a previous column. So we hit enter. Yes, we get a no value error, but we'll handle that just in a bit. So when we extend our formula, when we copy our formula all through, we see that, well, it does what we want here. So quarter 1 ends in March, but it gives us a 1 in April. Now that's just fine. And so we see that at the beginning of every quarter we have the number 1, but when we move to another year, we can see we have -3, and that's understandable because we're saying 1 minus 4, and so that's going to give us negative. We will also take care of this in a bit, but let's take care of this first one. Microsoft Excel has a function called N, just one letter, and it converts non-number values to a number, date to serial numbers, true to 1, anything else to 0. So we can use the N function here to eliminate this error. How? So we go back to our formula, and then we see that D10 it's not a number. So we're going to come to D10 and put the N function and have D10 in a bracket. So we hit our enter button. You can see it takes care of it and gives us 1 at the beginning of that quarter. So we can extend this all through, and then you can see that it works fine for us, except for -3 here. So what do? So we come back to our initial formula, it's not a good idea to put a different formula in here just to take care of this. But we can come here and use an if function. So we've used the AND function, and now we're using an if function in this video. So an if function, let me just show you what it does. If we have an if function, first you see it tells us that it checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false. So when we introduce the bracket, you can see here that it's asking us to give a logical test. A logical test might be, is it greater than 1, is it greater than 2, is it equal to 1, is it equal to 2, something like that. And then if the test is true, what value do we want it to return? And if it is false, what value do we want it to return? So I'm going to use this to take care of this situation here. So we're going to come back to this formula and then introduce an if function. Open the bracket. So this is our logical test. Our logical test is E10 minus N D10. So what I really want to do is that I want to find situations where it is not equal to 0, because situations where it is not equal to 0 means that that's the start of a quarter. So you can see 1 here is not equal to 0, that's the start of the quarter. Minus 3 is not equal to 0, so that's the start of the quarter. So not equal to 0, we use the anchor brackets, the 2, meaning that it's not less than and it's not greater than, and so we use this and they just put 0 here. So if it meets this condition, I want it to give me 1, else it should give me a 0. And so we can close our bracket, hit our enter button, and then extend by Ctrl Shift arrow right. The right arrow selects everything, and then we can do Ctrl arrow to copy it all through. So it copies it all through, and you can see that we've been able to identify the start of every quarter. Next comes the other question. How do we identify the end of every quarter? So we have end of quarter, end of quarter. So how do we identify the end of a quarter? So to do this, we actually need our month function. So we've done month function previously. If you remember, we used the month function to derive our quarter. So we still need the month function here. So what I'm going to do is implement the month function, month, and we're going to take any of these dates. They will give us the month. We just want the month number, and then hit our enter button. So you can see it gives us the month number, but here we're not after the month number. So what we do, we want end of quarter. We want to identify the end of the quarter. So we're going to take this month number and do just what we did when we were doing quarters. We're going to divide it by 3, because 3 months makes a quarter. So we divide by 3. I want to format this to be general, and then we copy it all through. So here it is. So what we see here is that at the end of each quarter, we've got a number telling us that this quarter 4, quarter 3, quarter 2, quarter 1. But still, that's not where we're going. We want to identify the end of the quarter. Of course, this is the end of the quarter. So if we can find anything, because if you look at the pattern here, you'll find out that these numbers are not whole numbers. They are not whole numbers. So if we can identify the whole numbers alone, that would take us to the end of quarters. So how do we do this? So we use what is called a mode function. So let me just tell you something about the mode function. So if you have the mode, M-O-D function, it says that it returns the remainder after a number is divided by a divisor. Let's see exactly what that means in its implementation. So the mode function takes two arguments. One is a number, and then the second is the divisor. So in this case, if I take a number like 8 and then I comma and I put 2 there, what it will return for me is 0, because 2 into 8 rather, it's going to give us 0, so nothing remains. So if I should come in here and use 9, see, it returns 1, because 2 can go into 8 without a remainder, but into 9 we have a remainder of 1. Now what happens in a situation where the number is smaller than the divisor? So if we hit our enter button, see what it does. It returns the same number, because the divisor cannot divide that number. The number is smaller than the divisor. And so because of this pattern of behavior, we can use it in here. So what we do is just mode, open a bracket, and then divide, a comma, and it wants us to give a divisor. So we are going to use 1, a divisor of 1. So when you hit your enter button, notice that it gives you so you see, for every cell that has a whole number, you get 0. Every cell that has a whole number gets 0. Actually, that is the end of the quarter, just immediately the end of the quarter. So here, the next thing we do is to use our if statement again. So we're coming up with our if statement. We had used it previously here, and so we want to use it here. So we say if this is greater than 0, you can see that when it's not the end of the quarter, it is greater than 0. What I want it to give me is a 0, else it should give me 1. And we'll close the bracket. So you can see that this is the beginning of a quarter, but here it's 0. So we're going to implement this through, and so you can see that we get what we want. So these are the ends of the quarter. Ends of the quarter. Ends of the quarter. So one question that usually comes sometimes, especially when we are modeling things like debts, and we want to find the interest rate after the total number of days in a quarter, we'll be able to use these end of quarter flags to do just that. So this is what I'm going to do. So let's have here, end of quarter flags. So these are end of quarter flags. So what I'm going to do, I'm only going to reference this and copy it down. So that's fine. And then we have days in quarter. We have days in quarter. So these are days, and this just boolean. That's if we are taking them as, just create this. So here I just want to show that these are units. These are descriptions. These are descriptions here. Okay, so let's have them here. So that's fine. So the question now is, how do I get the number of days that are in a quarter? So what I need to do, I need to use another function, the sum function. Although we're using the sum function here, we'll still treat the sum function in another video because of other things that we can actually use the sum function. So here we implement the sum function, and then what we do, we want the number of days. We know that this row has got the number of days, this row has got the number of days. So what we do is we want to sum every 3 months backwards, every 3 months backwards. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select 3 cells backwards, just like this, and then hit my button. So you notice that the sum function is able to take care of a text. So it's going to see those texts as 0. So you can see this formula is telling us that if it sums the current month and 2 months backwards, it gets 31. So I'm going to copy this all through, and so we have this. But because I just want the number of days at the end of a quarter, what I just need to do is multiply this with end of quarter flags. So that eliminates everything that's not at the end of the quarter, and so we have this. So we have the number of days at the end of the quarter. And if we want to extend this, for example, we want to find out the interest rate on a debt at the end of every quarter, we would have this waiting for us to use, you know, at any time in the model. And so you see, if we should change this to 2021, you see everything plays fine, adjusts to what we want, and then your model would run. So I hope you found this video a video that you could learn something from. As I always encourage, if you find it helpful, you want to subscribe if you're not subscribed yet, or you want to make comments so that I could know other things that we can bring into the tutorial, so that we could have a good understanding of functions that we use in financial modeling. Thank you for watching this video.